Jesus in his words. They sent their disciples along with the supporters of Herod to him. "Teacher," they said, "we know that you are genuine and that you teach God's way as it really is. We know that you are not swayed by people's opinions because you don't show favoritism. So tell us, what do you think? Does the law allow people to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" Knowing their evil motives, Jesus replied, "Why do you test me, you hypocrites? Show me the coin used to pay the tax." And they brought him a denarius. "Whose image and inscription is this?" he asked. "Caesar's," they replied. Then he said, "Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God." When they heard this, they were astonished, and they departed. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
May God's word be spoken and God's word be heard. Amen. When my oldest son was about 4 years old, we were driving down the highway and he made some comment about the road signs. And his father said, "Yes, when I was a little boy, I would sit in the back seat with my pea shooter and see if I could hit those signs." I cringed. But my son said, "Technically speaking, that was littering and you could be fined." Because like most 4-year-olds, he had learned the rules. And it was his place to announce what those rules were. Technically speaking, Jesus, are we supposed to be paying our taxes to Caesar? Caesar's an outsider. Caesar is the Roman government. We are occupied. They are pagans. Does God's law allow us to give them our money? Technically speaking. But Jesus knew their motives. What is the motive of someone who speaks technically? We've all used those terms. We've all either said or heard someone say, "Well, technically that's not spelled correctly. Technically you need to have this. Technically you need to..." When we speak technically, we are passing judgment, are we not? We are putting ourselves in the place of a judge and saying, "Well, that's not the correct punctuation, or that's not the correct equipment, or that's not the right procedure. This is how you're supposed to do it." So the Pharisees were playing judge of Caesar. We don't like his agenda. We don't like what he's doing to our people. He's not one of us. He's not following our rules. He's not doing it our way. We should not have to give our money to his regime. But Jesus knows what happens when we try to get out of that responsibility, that we are in fact playing judge. The Pharisees are playing judge. Caesar is not good. The regime is not good. We should not give it our money. But let's look at it a different way. Under Roman rule, they had a peace that they had not had in a long time. Their sons were not going to war. They had paved roads that were amazing. As a result, they had incredible commerce. And the Jewish people were given the right to practice their religion undisturbed by the Roman government. They did not have to participate in the pagan practices that the rest of the Roman government did. They were allowed to have their own leaders. They were allowed to have their own rulers and practice their religion undisturbed by the Roman government. And what they really missed was that it was under the Roman occupation that the Messiah came. They didn't get it. They thought they could play judge and say the ruler is wrong. And we will use God's law to show that the governor is wrong and that we don't have to pay the government. But Jesus in his wisdom points out that when you play judge of the governor, you end up playing judge of God. God is in control. God alone is God, as we heard in the other readings. God is God, and there are no idols that have power over God. And when we play judge and say this ruler is wrong, Caesar is wrong, we should not support Caesar, we may in fact be working against God's purposes. God used Caesar to protect his people. God used the Roman Empire to advance God's causes, not the Pharisees' causes. So they missed the point. And Jesus is saying, when we play judge, we end up judging God. The thing to do is to give Caesar what is owed to Caesar. Not our judgment of Caesar, but what Caesar is owed. And in doing so, we will end up giving God what is owed to God. And we will not play judge of God and God's ways and saying what we should or shouldn't be doing. Now, it is not insignificant that the issue is money. Should we pay taxes to Caesar? Should we give God what God has asked for in terms of money? Because if Jesus is really of God, then Jesus knows the real ways of humanity. It is very interesting that in the Gospels, Jesus speaks about money more times, far more times, than Jesus talks about sin. Isn't that surprising? We like to say, oh, we shouldn't talk about money. But let's talk about sin. But Jesus talked very little about sin. And when he did, he was forgiving it. But what he talked a lot about was money. Because, again, the Gospel of Matthew has a purpose. It's telling us that we are called to be changed. We are to be changed into creatures fit for the kingdom of heaven. And creatures are changed into creatures of heaven when we renew our minds, when we change the way we think about things. And the way we think about money, the way we think that that it is ours, that we have control over it, that we can decide where it goes and we can be the judge, ultimately changes us. It forms us into the kind of person we ultimately become. Are we becoming people who have put ourselves in the place of God, deciding what is right, what is wrong, what fits the law, what is technically correct? Are we the judges, or do we in fact believe in God?